Power is an intoxicating drug, especially when pinned to a cheap tin badge. When an arrogant local cop forced a terrified waitress to her knees over a spilled cup of coffee, he thought he owned the room. He didn't notice the quiet man in the corner booth, a ruthless federal prosecutor who destroyed bullies for a living. The neon sign of the Copper Grill hummed a violent, flickering red into the midnight rain of Delaware County, Pennsylvania. It was 11:45 p.m. on a miserable Tuesday in November, the kind of night where the cold seeps straight through your shoes and settles in your bones. Inside, the diner smelled of stale frying oil, bleach, and burnt dark roast coffee. 22-year-old Chloe Hastings leaned against the stainless steel counter of the Waitress station, pressing the heels of her hands into her exhausted eyes. She had been on her feet since 2 in the afternoon, working a grueling double shift to cover the upcoming tuition installment for her nursing program at Penn State Brandywine. Her lower back throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. She just needed to survive 45 more minutes until closing. The bell above the glass door chimed violently, bringing with it a gust of freezing wind. In walked Officer Bradley Dixon. Dixon was a 15-year veteran of the 8th Precinct, a man whose reputation preceded him in all the worst ways. He was a mountain of a man with a thick neck, an aggressively shaved head, and a swagger that demanded everyone in the room shrink to accommodate his ego. In the local community, Dixon was notorious. He was the kind of cop who racked up excessive force complaints that mysteriously vanished from internal affairs records. Beside him was his rookie partner, a nervous 20-something named Kevin Reed, who always seemed to be shrinking into his oversized tactical vest. "Booth 3, Chloe," the shift manager, Stan, hissed from the kitchen pass, visibly shrinking back. "And get it right. You know how he gets." Chloe grabbed 2 laminated menus, pasting on a customer service smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. "Evening, officers. Just coffee tonight, or can I get you something from the grill?" "2 black coffees. Make sure it's actually hot this time," Dixon barked, not even bothering to look up at her. He slid into the vinyl booth, his heavy leather duty belt creaking loudly against the plastic. He spread his arms out along the back of the booth, claiming the space like a feudal lord surveying his peasants. "Coming right up," Chloe said, her voice tight. As she hurried back to the coffee station, she failed to notice the only other patron in the diner. Sitting in the dimly lit corner booth, partially obscured by a dying potted fern, was Arthur Pendleton. Arthur did not look like a man to be feared. He was 48, a black man with silver threading through his close-cropped hair, dressed impeccably but quietly in a charcoal wool turtleneck and a tailored navy trench coat draped over the seat beside him. A half-eaten slice of cherry pie sat on the table, alongside a neatly folded copy of the Wall Street Journal. But Arthur Pendleton was not a late-night drifter. He was the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. He had spent the last 15 years taking down corrupt police departments, prosecuting hate crimes, and dismantling systemic abuses of power from Chicago to Baltimore. He was in town quietly visiting his ailing mother at the nearby Mercy Hospital, stopping only for a quiet moment of solitude before heading to his hotel. Arthur took a slow sip of his tea, his sharp, observant eyes tracking the 2 officers. He had spent enough time deposing dirty cops to recognize the predator's body language radiating from Dixon. The arrogance, the casual cruelty in his voice. Arthur's mind, naturally trained for investigation, began recording details. Officer's name tag, Dixon. Badge number, 4092. Chloe returned to the table carrying a round plastic tray with 2 heavy ceramic mugs of steaming coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly from sheer exhaustion. As she approached booth 3, The toe of her worn, non-slip shoe caught a loose corner of the linoleum flooring. It happened in slow motion. Chloe pitched forward slightly. She managed to catch her balance, but the tray tilted. A splash of scalding black coffee sloshed over the rim of the mug, falling directly onto Officer Dixon's highly polished, tactical black leather boot. "Ah, son of a bitch!" Dixon roared, violently shoving the table forward. The mugs rattled, nearly tipping over entirely. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Chloe gasped, her face draining of all colour. She immediately set the tray down and scrambled to grab a handful of paper napkins from the metal dispenser. "I'm so sorry, officer. The floor right there is peeling. I lost my footing." "Are you blind or just stupid?" Dixon snarled, standing up. At 6'3", he loomed over her like a dark cloud. His face was flushed crimson. "Do you have any idea how much these boots cost? You just ruined a $200 pair of Danners, you clumsy little brat." "I'll pay to have them cleaned, I swear. Let me just wipe it." Chloe reached down with the napkins, her hands trembling violently. In the corner booth, Arthur Pendleton's jaw tightened. He slowly set his ceramic teacup down on the saucer. The clink was entirely drowned out by the sound of the rain lashing against the diner windows. He didn't move to intervene. Not yet. A prosecutor knows that to build an airtight case, you must let a criminal fully complete the act. He watched, his eyes narrowing into cold, calculating slits. "Don't touch me," Dixon snapped, kicking his foot back slightly, causing Chloe to recoil. Rookie Officer Reed glanced around nervously. "Hey, Brad, it's fine, man. It's just a splash of coffee. Let's just—" "Shut up, Kevin," Dixon barked, his eyes never leaving Chloe. He was enjoying this. The power trip was radiating off him in waves. He looked at the terrified girl, taking in her frayed apron, her exhaustion, and her absolute vulnerability. She was prey. "Stan!" Dixon yelled towards the kitchen window. The manager's balding head popped up, pale and sweating. "Your girl here just assaulted a police officer, poured boiling water on me. Sounds like aggravated battery to me." "Officer, please," Chloe begged, tears instantly welling in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. Please don't do this. I can't afford any trouble. I'm putting myself through school." "Oh, you're a student. Well, you're about to get an education," Dixon sneered, resting his hand casually over the handle of his service weapon. An intimidation tactic so blatant it made the hair on the back of Arthur's neck stand up. "I know your plates, Chloe," Dixon said, leaning in close, his voice dropping to a menacing, theatrical whisper. "I know you drive that beat-up blue Honda out back with the expired registration. I could tow it right now. I could arrest you for assault, throw you in lockup, and let's see what happens to your little nursing school dreams when you catch a felony charge. All because you're a clumsy, disrespectful idiot." Chloe's chest heaved with quiet sobs. Her entire life was dangling by a thread. The Honda was her only way to clinical rotations. A criminal charge would ruin her background check for nursing. She was utterly trapped, pinned under the boot of a man who held the keys to her destruction. "What do you want me to do?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Dixon smiled. It was an ugly, cruel thing. "I want you to clean it," he said softly. "On your knees." A suffocating silence fell over the copper grill. Even the grill cook in the back stopped scraping the flat top. "Brad, Jesus, come on," Officer Reed whispered, his face flushing with secondary embarrassment. "People are looking." "Who's looking?" Dixon shot back, waving a dismissive hand around the empty diner, entirely glossing over the black man sitting quietly in the shadows of the corner booth. "There's nobody here but us, and she made a mess. She needs to clean it up properly." Dixon pointed a thick, calloused finger at the puddle of coffee on the floor, and then down to his boot. Get down, use the napkins. Apologize properly. Chloe looked towards the kitchen for help. Stan had disappeared, hiding behind the stainless steel refrigerators, too terrified of the local police to defend his own employee. She looked at Reed, but the rookie looked away, examining the ceiling tiles, complicit in his silence. The weight of the world pressed down on Chloe's shoulders. The injustice of it burned in her throat, choking her. But the terrifying reality of poverty and the absolute power of the badge won. With a tear slipping down her cheek and splashing onto her apron, Chloe slowly bent her knees. The fabric of her uniform pants brushed against the dirty linoleum. She sank to the floor, kneeling in front of the officer. She reached out with her crumpled bundle of napkins and began to dab at the black leather of his boot. "I'm sorry," she choked out, humiliating sobs shaking her small frame. "I'm sorry, Officer Dixon. See? Was that so hard?" Dixon chuckled, looking down at her like she was an obedient dog. "A little respect goes a long way. Make sure you get the welt. You missed a spot on the sole." In booth 4, Arthur Pendleton had seen enough. The federal prosecutor had watched cartels operate. He had sat across from white-collar billionaires who had stolen pensions from thousands of families. But there was a unique, visceral disgust reserved in his heart for public servants who terrorized the vulnerable. Arthur smoothly slid out of his booth. He didn't rush. He moved with the slow, deliberate grace of an apex predator that had just locked onto its target. He reached into the inner breast pocket of his tailored jacket, his fingers brushing against a heavy gold badge housed in black leather, before pulling out a small, silver Mont Blanc pen and a moleskin notebook. His leather dress shoes made a sharp, rhythmic click-clack against the floor tiles as he approached the aisle. "Miss!" A deep, resonant voice echoed through the diner. It was smooth, but laced with a commanding authority that instantly sucked the air out of the room. "Stand up." Chloe flinched, looking up through wet eyelashes. Dixon whipped his head around, annoyed at the interruption. Arthur stopped about 6 feet from the officers. He stood perfectly straight, his hands loosely clasped in front of him. "Excuse me," Dixon said, sizing up the man. He saw a middle-aged black man in nice clothes, but didn't recognize him from the local affluent neighborhoods. "Step back, buddy. We're handling a police matter here." "You are handling a spilled beverage, Officer Dixon," Arthur replied, his voice dangerously calm. "Miss, I said stand up. You do not have to kneel for this man or anyone else." Chloe hesitated, looking between the terrifying cop and this mysterious, commanding stranger. Slowly, shakily, she pushed herself up off the floor, clutching the wet napkins to her chest. Dixon's face darkened into a furious scowl. His hand hovered over his duty belt again. "I don't know who you think you are, pal, but you're interfering with official police business. You need to turn around, walk out that door, and mind your own damn business before I decide you're disturbing the peace." Arthur didn't blink. He calmly clicked the top of his silver pen. "Your name is Officer Bradley Dixon," Arthur said, writing in his notebook. "Badge number 4092. Your partner is Officer Kevin Reed. Badge number 5117. Dixon took a step forward, trying to use his sheer physical size to intimidate Arthur. "Hey, I didn't give you permission to write down my badge number. Are you deaf? I'm telling you to leave the premises." "You don't need to give me permission, officer. Your badge numbers are public record," Arthur said smoothly, finally looking up from his notepad, his dark eyes locking onto Dixon's. There was no fear in Arthur's gaze, only clinical dissection. Just as this establishment's security cameras, Arthur pointed a long, elegant finger toward the black dome camera mounted above the cash register, are privately owned, capturing what has just transpired here. Dixon scoffed, rolling his shoulders. "Oh, I get it. You're one of those sovereign citizen nutjobs, or a civil rights auditor looking for a YouTube payday. Listen to me very carefully, old man. I am the law in this town. She assaulted me. I was well within my rights to demand restitution." "Restitution?" Arthur repeated, tasting the word. He let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Fascinating legal theory. Forcing a civilian to kneel and wipe your shoes under the explicit threat of unlawful arrest and vehicle impoundment. Are you familiar with Title 18, United States Code, Section 242? Dixon blinked, his brow furrowing. The legal jargon caught him off guard, but his ego quickly paved over his ignorance. "I don't give a damn about your imaginary codes. It is the federal statute governing the deprivation of rights under color of law," Arthur interrupted, his voice suddenly rising in volume and power, echoing off the diner walls like a gavel striking a sound block. "It is a felony. It carries up to 10 years in a federal penitentiary." Officer Reed, the rookie, suddenly stepped back, his face draining of blood. He recognized the tone. This wasn't a YouTube auditor. This man carried the specific, terrifying cadence of a judge. Dixon, however, was too blind with rage to read the room. He unclipped the retention strap on his holster with a loud snap. "All right, that's it. Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for obstruction and disorderly conduct." Chloe screamed, backing away. "No, please, leave him alone." Arthur Pendleton didn't move a muscle. He didn't raise his hands. He simply stared at Dixon's hand, hovering over the gun. "Officer Dixon," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. "If you unholster that weapon, you will not only lose your badge tonight, you will lose your pension, your freedom, and every asset you own. I promise you that with every fiber of my being." Dixon hesitated. The absolute, unshakable confidence of the man standing before him caused a tiny fracture in the cop's armor. "Who the hell are you?" Dixon spat, though his voice lacked its previous venom. Arthur slowly reached his left hand into his breast pocket. Dixon tensed, but Arthur merely pulled out a sleek leather wallet. With a flick of his wrist, he let it fall open. Pinned to the leather was a heavy gold shield, flanked by the majestic eagle of the Department of Justice. Below it, a stark white identification card bearing the seal of the United States Attorney General's office. "My name is Arthur Pendleton," he said, the words falling like lead weights onto the linoleum floor. "I am the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. And you, officer, have just made the gravest mistake of your entire miserable career." Dixon's thick hand fell away from his weapon as if the heavy black leather of his holster had suddenly caught fire. The aggressive crimson flush that had dominated his features only seconds before instantly vanished, leaving his face the sickly pale color of old parchment. He stared at the gleaming gold Department of Justice shield pinned to the wallet, his brain violently misfiring as it struggled to process the catastrophic reality of his situation. He was not dealing with a local nuisance. He was not dealing with a civilian auditor aiming for a viral internet video. He was dealing with a federal apex predator. For a long, agonizing moment, the only sound in the diner was the frantic, rhythmic drumming of the midnight rain against the front windows. Your DOJ?" Dixon stammered, his previous booming roar reduced to a pathetic, breathy rasp. The absolute authority he had wielded over the young waitress just moments ago evaporated into the cold, stale air of the restaurant. "I am," Arthur Pendleton replied, his voice a perfectly calibrated instrument of absolute dread. He did not break eye contact. He did not put the badge away. He held it up just long enough for the gravity of the federal seal to crush whatever defiance remained in the patrolman's chest. Slowly, Arthur snapped the leather wallet shut and tucked it back into the inner pocket of his tailored jacket. Rookie Officer Kevin Reed looked like he was going to vomit. He took another large step backward, physically distancing himself from his training officer. Reed's eyes darted frantically between Arthur and the exit, a trapped animal, realizing the cage door had just slammed shut. "Now," Arthur said, taking a singular, calculated step forward. The gap between him and the police officers narrowed, shifting the physical dynamics of the room. "Officer Reed, step away from him." Reed didn't hesitate. He practically leapt to the side, his hands nervously finding the top of his tactical vest. "Sir, I tried to tell him to stop," Reed blurted out, his voice cracking with sheer panic. "I told him it was just coffee." "Shut your mouth, Kevin," Dixon snapped, a desperate, hollow attempt to regain control of his subordinate. He turned back to Arthur, attempting to force a nervous, sickeningly arrogant smile. "Look, Mr. Pendleton, let's just all take a collective breath here. There's been a massive misunderstanding. The girl tripped. It's been a long shift. We deal with the worst of the worst out here on the streets of Delaware County every single night. Sometimes the adrenaline runs a little hot. We're all on the same side here. Law enforcement, right? Do not insult my intelligence, and do not ever presume we are on the same side," Arthur said quietly. The sheer coldness in his tone made Chloe shiver where she stood behind him. "You do not enforce the law, Officer Dixon. You use it as a blunt instrument to terrorize citizens you deem too weak to fight back. But tonight, you chose the wrong room, and you chose the wrong girl." Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone, a sleek black device that looked incredibly dangerous in his steady hands. He unlocked the screen and brought up his contacts. "I'm placing a call," Arthur announced to the room. "Not to dispatch, not to a desk sergeant. I am calling Chief Thomas Harrigan. I have his direct cellular number because my office audited your department's civil asset forfeiture program 2 years ago. I imagine he is going to be incredibly displeased to be woken up at midnight." Dixon's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated horror. "Sir, please, don't call the chief. We can handle this internally. I'll apologize to the girl. I'll pay for the coffee. Let's just walk away." Arthur ignored him, pressing the phone to his ear. The silence in the diner stretched tight until the line clicked open. "Harrigan," a gruff, sleep-heavy voice echoed faintly from the earpiece. "Chief Harrigan, this is Deputy Assistant Attorney General Arthur Pendleton, Civil Rights Division, Washington, D.C. There was a sharp rustle of sheets on the other end of the line. The chief was suddenly, violently awake. "Mr. Pendleton? Sir, it's past midnight. Are you in my jurisdiction?" "I am currently standing in the Copper Grill Diner on Route 42, Arthur said, his eyes never leaving Dixon's sweating face. "I am standing with 2 of your patrolmen, Officer Bradley Dixon and Officer Kevin Reed. I just witnessed Officer Dixon force a 22-year-old female waitress to her knees to clean his boots under the direct threat of a false felony arrest." "Jesus Christ," Chief Harrigan breathed over the phone. "I need you down here immediately, Chief," Arthur commanded, his tone leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. "And I want an internal affairs unit and a commanding patrol captain dispatched to this location within 15 minutes. If they are not here, my next call is to the FBI field office in Philadelphia to have your officers arrested by federal agents. I'm leaving my house right now. 15 minutes, Mr. Pendleton. Don't let them leave." The line went dead. Arthur lowered the phone. Dixon was trembling now, a pathetic sight of a bully entirely stripped of his power. He looked toward the kitchen. "Stan!" Dixon yelled, desperation clawing at his throat. "Stan, get out here. Tell him I'm a good regular. We joke around, right? It was a joke." Stan remained hidden, completely refusing to engage. The blue wall of silence was about to meet a federal wrecking ball. It took exactly 12 minutes for the cavalry to arrive. The flashing red and blue lights of 3 separate police cruisers cut through the dark, rainy night, illuminating the diner's large windows in a strobe light sequence of panic. Chief Thomas Harrigan, a stocky man with silver hair hurriedly stuffed under a uniform cap, burst through the front doors, followed closely by a police captain and 2 stern-faced detectives from Internal Affairs. Harrigan took one look at Chloe, who was quietly weeping behind the counter, and then looked at Dixon. The chief's face contorted in absolute disgust. "Chief, I can explain," Dixon started, stepping forward with his hands raised pleadingly. "Shut your mouth, Brad," Harrigan barked, pointing a furious finger at him. "Do not say another word." Harrigan turned to Arthur, extending his hand. "Mr. Pendleton, I cannot express how deeply apologetic I am that you had to witness this. I am not the one who deserves your apology, Chief," Arthur said, refusing the handshake. He gestured toward Chloe. "That young woman was terrorized by a man wearing your department's uniform. Now, I want his badge, I want his weapon, and I want the body camera footage from both officers impounded immediately into federal custody." Dixon turned to his partner, a final, desperate twist of manipulation forming in his mind. "Kevin, back me up. You tell them. She threw the coffee on me. It was assault. I was trying to de-escalate." Arthur slowly turned his gaze to the young rookie. "Officer Reed, this is the defining moment of your life. Lying to a federal prosecutor in the commission of an investigation carries a mandatory minimum sentence. Tell the truth, right now, or you will go down with him." Kevin Reed looked at Dixon, the man who had bullied him, belittled him, and forced him to cover up minor abuses for the last 8 months. Then he looked at Arthur, and finally, at Chloe. The rookie took a deep, shuddering breath. He reached up to the center of his tactical vest, unclipped his black body camera, and held it out towards the Internal Affairs detective. "She tripped," Reed said, his voice shaking but growing louder with every word. "It was an accident. Brad threatened to tow her car and ruin her nursing career if she didn't get on her knees. He did it because he could. And it's not the first time he's done something like this to a civilian." The diner gasped. The blue wall had officially crumbled. "You little rat!" Dixon screamed, lunging toward Reed. Instantly, the 2 Internal Affairs detectives tackled Dixon, slamming the massive man face first onto the linoleum floor, right where Chloe had knelt just 30 minutes prior. The sound of metal handcuffs ratcheting tight echoed sharply in the room. The immediate aftermath was swift and uncompromising. Bradley Dixon was stripped of his badge and service weapon right there on the dirty floor of the Copper Grill. He was dragged out into the freezing rain, shoved into the back of an Internal Affairs cruiser, and taken away in absolute disgrace. Once the police cleared out to take statements outside, the diner felt remarkably empty. Arthur Pendleton slowly turned back to Chloe. She was still clutching her apron, her eyes wide with shock and residual adrenaline. Arthur's stern, terrifying demeanor softened dramatically. He walked over to the counter and offered her a gentle, reassuring smile. He told her she was entirely safe now. "How did you know my name?" Chloe whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I pay attention to the details. It is written on the whiteboard in the kitchen," Arthur said softly. He pulled out one of his heavy cardstock business cards, embossed with the DOJ seal, and slid it across the stainless steel counter. "You will likely be contacted by federal investigators in the coming days to give an official statement. If anyone from this town, this precinct, or this county attempts to intimidate you or retaliate against you, you call this number. It rings directly to my private desk. Do you understand?" "I understand," Chloe nodded. clutching the card like a lifeline. "Thank you so much. If you had not been here, I would have lost everything." "You lost nothing tonight but a bad memory," Arthur reassured her. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and laid it next to his half-eaten pie. "For the pie and for the dry cleaning, keep your head up, Chloe. You are going to be a phenomenal nurse." With that, the quiet prosecutor picked up his trench coat, walked out into the rain, and vanished into the night. The fallout over the next 2 years was monumental. True to Arthur's word, the Department of Justice did not let the case slip quietly away. When the body camera footage was subpoenaed and entered into evidence, it sparked a massive investigation into the entire precinct. Bradley Dixon was indicted by a federal grand jury. With Kevin Reed testifying against him, the trial was brief. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Dixon was sentenced to 8 years in a federal penitentiary for civil rights violations. He lost his pension, his freedom, and the absolute power he had so viciously abused. Chief Harrigan was forced into retirement, and the precinct underwent federal oversight. As for Chloe Hastings, the terrifying night at the diner became the catalyst for her incredible resilience. The local government, terrified of a massive civil rights lawsuit, quietly settled with her out of court for a substantial sum. The settlement money allowed her to quit her grueling midnight shifts at the Copper Grill. She bought a reliable car, paid off her tuition, and dedicated herself entirely to her rigorous clinical rotations. 3 years later, on a bright May afternoon, the Penn State Brandywine Auditorium was packed with cheering families. Chloe Hastings walked across the stage to receive her degree. She had survived the exhaustion, the poverty, and the cruelty of a man who tried to break her spirit. Scanning the cheering crowd, her gaze caught something entirely else. Standing near the back exit doors was a distinguished black man dressed in a sharply tailored charcoal suit. Arthur Pendleton offered a warm, proud smile, gave a single, deeply respectful nod, and then quietly slipped out. If you found this true-to-life story of justice and resilience inspiring, please hit the like button and share it with friends to spread the message. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you never miss a new video.